Red Bull just discovered something they can't fix. And it has nothing to do with the car. Right now, the fastest driver in Formula 1 might be losing the one thing that made him unstoppable: his motivation. After the Japanese Grand Prix, Max Verstappen didn't complain about strategy. He didn't blame the team. He didn't even focus on performance. He questioned whether it's worth it. And that changes everything. Because we're not talking about a struggling driver. We're talking about a 4-time world champion, still in his prime, who suddenly looks disconnected. And here's the part that should worry everyone. While Red Bull stayed to work on the future of Formula 1, Verstappen left to drive somewhere else. Something simpler. Something he actually enjoys. Which means this is no longer about fixing a car. This is about losing a driver mentally. And once that happens, you can't engineer your way out of it. Subscribe now, because what Red Bull just realized could change Formula 1 faster than anyone expects. At first, Red Bull didn't panic. Because they've seen difficult moments before. Cars that didn't work. Setups that failed. Entire weekends that made no sense. And every single time, Verstappen reacted the same way. He pushed harder. He demanded more. He became even sharper. That's what made him different. That's what made him dominant. But this time, something felt off. Because after Japan, the reaction wasn't the same. There was no urgency. No visible frustration. No obsession with finding lap time. Instead, there was silence. And in Formula 1, silence from a driver like Verstappen is not normal. It's a signal. Because when a driver stops fighting the problem, it usually means he's no longer fully invested in solving it. And that's exactly what Red Bull started to notice. Not in the data. Not in the telemetry. But in the behavior. Shorter feedback. Less emotional debriefs. Fewer intense conversations with engineers. Small details. But in a team like Red Bull, small details matter. Because they reveal bigger truths. And here's the truth they're starting to face. This is not a performance issue. This is a mindset shift. Because Verstappen is no longer reacting like someone trying to dominate. He's reacting like someone evaluating whether it's still worth it. And that difference is massive. Because performance problems can be solved. You bring updates. You adjust setups. You analyze data. But mindset? That's something completely different. You can't engineer motivation. You can't simulate passion. And you definitely can't force a driver to feel something he no longer feels. But here's where it becomes even more revealing. Because this shift didn't happen overnight. It's been building. Quietly. Race after race. Comment after comment. Always pointing to the same idea. This doesn't feel the same anymore. And once that idea takes hold, it starts affecting everything. Decision-making. Risk-taking. Even how much energy a driver is willing to invest. And that's exactly what Red Bull is starting to see. Not a slower Verstappen, but a different one. And that might be even more dangerous. Because if this continues, then the real problem is not how fast the car is. It's how much the driver still wants to push it to the limit. And that's where Red Bull's concern turns into something much more serious. Because once a driver changes mentally, it starts showing up in places no one can hide. On track. In moments that define races. Because when Verstappen was fully locked in, every move had intent. Every overtake felt inevitable. Every lap looked like control. But now, there's hesitation. Small, almost invisible moments where he doesn't commit the same way. Not because he can't, but because something inside is no longer pushing him to. And that's the most dangerous shift of all. Because in Formula 1, the difference between winning and losing is not just speed. It's conviction. That extra commitment on corner entry. That willingness to take a risk others won't. That belief that you will make it stick. And when that fades, even slightly, everything changes. But here's the part that makes this even harder for Red Bull to accept. Because this isn't about confidence. Verstappen hasn't lost confidence. He knows exactly what he can do. This is about desire. And desire is fragile. Because once it starts to disappear, it doesn't come back easily. Now connect that to everything happening around him. A car he doesn't trust. A regulation set he doesn't enjoy. A sport that feels more restrictive than ever. And on the other side? A completely different world. The Nürburgring. GT cars. Pure driving. Where he steps out of the car and smiles. And that contrast is impossible to ignore. Because now, every time he gets back into a Formula 1 car, he's not just driving. He's comparing. And comparison changes perception. What once felt normal, now feels limited. What once felt exciting, now feels controlled. And once that switch happens in a driver's mind, there's no going back to how it was. But here's the final layer Red Bull is starting to understand. Because this isn't just about losing motivation in the moment. It's about what that leads to. Because when a driver stops feeling that internal drive, he starts asking different questions. Not how to win, but why he's still doing it. Not how to improve, but whether it still makes sense. And those questions don't stay quiet. They grow. They follow him from race to race. Until eventually, they demand an answer. And that's the moment Red Bull is trying to avoid. Because once Verstappen answers that question honestly, everything could change. Not just for the team, but for the entire sport. Because if the most complete driver on the grid reaches the point where he no longer wants it, then the real issue is not the driver. It's what the sport has become. And that's the realization Red Bull never wanted to face. Because fixing a car is difficult. But fixing that might be impossible. And this is where the situation reaches its breaking point. Because once Red Bull understands the problem, they also understand something much worse. They might not be able to solve it. Because think about what they're dealing with. Not a mechanical failure. Not a strategic mistake. Not even a development issue. They're dealing with a driver who is slowly disconnecting from the very thing that made him great. And that's not something you fix in a factory. That's something you either feel or you don't. But here's where it becomes even more critical. Because Red Bull is built around Verstappen. Every decision, every development path, every concept of the car, it all revolves around him. His feedback, his style, his way of extracting performance. Take that away, or even reduce it slightly, and the entire structure starts to shift. Not collapse, but weaken. Because suddenly, the reference point is gone. And without a clear reference, development becomes slower, less precise, more uncertain. And that's something Red Bull cannot afford. But here's the part that makes this even more uncomfortable. Because internally, they're starting to realize something else. Even if they fix the car, even if they give him a competitive package again, that might not be enough. Because motivation doesn't always return with performance. Sometimes, once it's gone, it stays gone. And that's the scenario no one wants to say out loud. But everyone is thinking. Because now, every improvement they bring to the car is not just about performance. It's a test. A test to see if Verstappen reacts. If he reconnects. If that spark comes back. And if it doesn't, then the message becomes very clear. The issue was never just the car. But now, everything leads to one final realization. Because if Red Bull cannot bring that motivation back, then they are not just facing a difficult season. They are facing a future without the driver they built everything around. And that changes everything. Because replacing speed is hard. Replacing talent is harder. But replacing what Verstappen represents is almost impossible. And that's the real reason this situation feels so heavy inside the team. Because this is not about losing races. It's about losing direction. Losing identity. Losing the one constant that defined their dominance. And if that happens, then what we're watching right now is not just a temporary struggle. It's the beginning of the end of an era. An era that wasn't supposed to end like this. Not with defeat. Not with decline. But with something much quieter. A driver who simply stops wanting it. And if that's true, then the most dangerous part of all of this is not what Red Bull discovered. It's what they can't change. And that's when the situation becomes irreversible. Because there is a moment in every driver's career where everything becomes clear. Not to the team, not to the fans, but to the driver himself. A moment where he stops asking questions and already knows the answer. And the most dangerous part for Red Bull is that this moment might have already happened. Quietly. Somewhere between Japan and the Nürburgring. Because when Verstappen chose to leave Suzuka, to skip one of the most important tests for his own team, that wasn't just a decision. It was a signal. A silent one. But a powerful one. Because drivers don't walk away from development unless something deeper is happening. And Red Bull knows it. They saw it. They felt it. And now, they're reacting to it. But here's the problem. They're reacting late. Because once a driver mentally steps away, you're no longer trying to motivate him. You're trying to bring him back. And bringing someone back is always harder than keeping them. Because now, every conversation inside Red Bull has changed. It's no longer just about lap time. It's about connection. About understanding what he's feeling. About trying to rebuild something that used to come naturally. And that creates tension. Not visible. Not public. But real. Because when a team starts focusing on keeping a driver mentally engaged, instead of just making him faster, it means something fundamental has shifted. But here's where everything finally connects. Because all of this, the silence, the distance, the Nürburgring, the comments about enjoyment, the question, is it worth it? They all point to the same conclusion. This is no longer about Formula One being difficult. This is about Formula One no longer giving Verstappen what he needs. And once that happens, the ending is no longer sudden. It becomes inevitable. Because drivers like Verstappen don't fade. They don't slowly disappear. They make decisions. Clear ones. Definitive ones. And when they do, there's no hesitation. No second thoughts. Just action. But here's the final truth Red Bull is now forced to face. They didn't just discover what's killing Verstappen's motivation. They discovered that it doesn't come from inside the team. It comes from the sport itself. The direction. The complexity. The loss of that raw connection between driver and machine. And that means something very simple. Even if Red Bull does everything right, it still might not be enough. Because the problem is bigger than them. And that leads to the one conclusion no one wants to say out loud. If nothing changes? If the feeling doesn't come back? If Formula One continues in this direction? Then Red Bull won't lose Verstappen because they failed. They'll lose him because the sport did. And when that happens, it won't just be the end of a partnership. It will be the moment everyone looks back on and realizes that this was where everything started to fall apart.